Okay, are we ready to go? All right.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm calling to order the regular meeting of the zoning administrator for the city of San Clemente. My name is Cecilia Gallardo Daly, and I am the zoning administrator. The first item of business is to receive and file the minutes of the zoning administrator meeting of October 22nd, 2020. So received and filed. The next item on the agenda is oral and written communication. This is the time on the agenda when members of the audience may address the zoning administrator on any item within the jurisdiction of the zoning administrator that is not on the zoning administrator agenda. Speakers can submit their comments on agenda items to the zoning administrator electronically. Material may be emailed to www.san-clemente.org/ZA public comment. Transmittal by 12 p.m. on zoning administrator meeting days is recommended. The zoning administrator is not permitted to discuss or take actions on items that do not appear on the agenda. It doesn't look like we have any speaker slips submitted for oral and written communication, so we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is public hearings. The time limitation for the public hearings is 10 minutes for applicants and 3 minutes for all other speakers. The public hearing process includes a staff presentation, a presentation by the applicant not to exceed 10 minutes, and public testimony not to exceed 3 minutes per speaker. Following closure of the public hearing, the zoning administrator will respond to questions raised during the hearing, discuss the issues, and act upon the matter by motion. The first public hearing item on the agenda is an amendment to a site plan permit for Zove's Restaurant at 155 Avenida Del Mar. And we will have our staff planner, Chris Wright, give us a report. Thank you, Chris.
Hello, good afternoon. Christopher Wright, project planner. This is a request to amend a previously approved site plan for a commercial redevelopment project at 155 Avenida Del Mar and 154 Avenida Granada. The project was approved by the Planning Commission in March of 2018. It included a 2-story commercial building, restaurant with full alcohol. It included 6 parking waivers, and the Planning Commission had found that it was exempt from CEQA. The project site includes 2 back-to-back parcels with an existing 1-story commercial building facing Avenida Del Mar and then a parking lot at the rear. Those 2 properties would be merged, and as a condition of approval and the prior design, there was supposed to be a drive aisle removed at the back of the property on Avenida Granada, and a shared drive aisle would be created between the project site and the adjacent property. There was at the time an agreement between the property owner of this project and the adjacent property owner to have that shared drive aisle with reciprocal parking agreement. And since the approval, the 2 property owners weren't able to come to an agreement. And so the project before you is to make changes to the site plan and the conditions of approval so that there is a restored drive aisle just on the project site. So they would have adequate circulation and egress, ingress to public parking. The parcel for the parking lot is actually leased by the city for public parking. That would continue, but as a condition of approval, there would no longer be a lease. Instead, there would be an agreement between the city and the property owner to maintain use of the parking for the public in exchange of getting those parking waivers. That was a big finding from the original approval. The conditions of approval and the resolution are updated in the new standard format. Most of the main project-specific conditions are similar. There's just a couple differences that I can go over if there's questions. The engineering department did need to consider a slight deviation of their technical standards for the revised site plan, and they're in support of that. It just relates to the width of a parking stall near a wall. The site plan changes include a trash enclosure on the site, reworking the circulation to access disabled parking, and shifting over the landscaping to accommodate the parking stalls closer to the side property line. The city's landscape consultant reviewed the landscape plan and had determined that it was consistent with the requirements and our design guidelines. So staff is able to meet all the same findings that were previously met by the city for the initial approval of the project. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you for that, Chris. I don't have any follow-up questions. I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing. And at this time, I will ask the applicant if they wish to speak or make a presentation.
Hello, this is Lindsay Ortega. I am the applicant and representative of Armin Karmardian, the restaurant operator for Zobes and property owner. First, I'd like to thank Chris Wright, our project planner, and everyone in the Planning and Public Works Department, and then again, everyone at the city for all of your hard work and guidance over the last 2 years as we've worked to try to find a solution to address some of these issues that have come up as a result of not being able to gain that reciprocal access agreement with the adjacent property owner. As you can see, the property is fairly narrow, and it did take careful planning and coordination to accommodate everything on site, such as circulation, parking, and the trash enclosure. But we're really happy with the end result, and we feel this is a really great plan to move forward. We're ready to submit the project into plan check and excited to break ground in early spring of 2021. And we have reviewed the staff report and agreed to all the conditions of approval. The property owner and restaurant operator, Armin, is present, as well as the project architect, Lisa Pomeroy. So we're able to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, great, thank you. Well, I don't have any follow-up questions for the applicant team. Thank you very much. The staff report was very thorough, and the plans that were submitted were pretty detailed and were a good exhibit for displaying the modifications that are being proposed. Chris, do we have any public comments on this item?
No comments have been received.
No comments have been received. Okay. All right. Then I am going to close the public hearing. And I have reviewed the project, been to the site, reviewed the report, the findings, and the conditions in detail. To eliminate the need for a reciprocal easement, the applicant proposes the site plan modifications that keep a separate drive aisle on the site and add the required trash enclosure. No changes are proposed to the type and intensity of development, the use and the number of parking spaces. The amendment is a request to modify the conditions of approval to reflect the proposed design changes. I have found that the amendment maintains parking supply. It's consistent with the design guidelines. It complies with the zoning requirements and sufficiently meets engineering standards for trash and circulation. Also, the proposed landscaping is designed to maintain the screening of parking spaces. The engineering department has reviewed the proposal, as Chris stated, and is recommending approval of modifications to parking stall widths for 2 on-site parking spaces. There are some modifications to the landscape plan that have been recommended by the city's landscape consultant, and project condition 4.5 addresses that condition of approval, and my understanding is the applicant is in agreement with those modifications. So With that, I can make the findings of approval for the site plan permit. The proposed development is permitted within the subject zone and complies with all of the applicable provisions of the zoning ordinance, the goals and objectives of the San Clemente General Plan, and the Coastal Land Use Plan. The site is suitable for the type and intensity of development that is proposed. The project as amended meets development standards of the zone that define the intended scale and size of development in the neighborhood, including urban open area, landscaping, building height, lot coverage, number of stories, density, and parking. While the modifications to the site plan are intended to eliminate the need for reciprocal access easement with the adjacent property, the applicant has been able to still meet the landscaping, parking, and circulation requirements. The proposed development will not be detrimental to public health, safety, or welfare, or materially injurious to properties and improvements in the vicinity. The project, as amended, approves the aesthetics of the site with high-quality architecture and site improvements that reflect the city's Spanish Village heritage. The project will be required to meet the California Building Code and Orange County Fire Authority regulations. The design changes bring the parking lot into compliance with requirements for landscaping, accessibility, and electric vehicle charging. The proposed development will not be unsightly or create disharmony with its locale and surroundings. The project includes a restaurant with outdoor dining, a pedestrian-oriented visitor-serving commercial use that's encouraged in the general plan and the coastal land use plan in the Del Mar and downtown core area. The two-story front elevation is consistent with the surrounding neighborhood that includes a mix of small-scale commercial and mixed-use developments with 1 and 2 stories. And the project includes an outdoor patio for restaurant dining that is accessible and visible from the adjacent sidewalk along Avenida Del Mar, similar to other restaurants in the area. The proposed development will minimize or eliminate adverse physical or visual effects which might otherwise result from unplanned or inappropriate development. The project proposes high-quality architecture and site improvements that follow the city's Spanish colonial revival architecture guidelines as required in the architectural and central business overlays. And the building has varied roof lines with shed and flat roof elements. The building has articulation and offsets. These massing effects reduce the size of the bulk and scale of the building for compatibility with surrounding properties, and the project improves the condition of the parking lot along Avenida Granada. So with that, I am going to determine that the project is categorically exempt from the requirements of the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to CEQA Guidelines Section 15303, Class 3, new construction or conversion of small structures. And I approve Resolution ZA 20-027, approving AMSPP 17-113, Zobes Restaurant, subject to the resolution and conditions of approval. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to the next public hearing item on the agenda. It is a minor architectural permit for the Ford residence at 614 East Avenida San Juan. And our staff planner, Christopher Wright, will be giving us a presentation. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Good afternoon again. This is a request for a minor architectural permit to expand a legal non-conforming residence at 614 East Avenida San Juan. The property is non-conforming because of a front yard setback. Doesn't meet the current zoning ordinance standard. It has an 11-foot front setback where 20 feet is required. The project involves an exterior remodel and an 867 square foot addition to the residence. The floor plan would be reconfigured to add a family and kitchen common room, and on the second floor to expand living spaces It would expand the residence's living area to 2,625 square feet. The project meets all the development standards. Overall, considering since 1996, with the proposed project, it would result in an enlargement of the non-conforming structure by 40%. Our zoning ordinance allows non-conforming structures to be expanded less than 50% and maintain their non-conforming status if they're in character with the neighborhood, consistent with the general plan, the projects are consistent with the development standards, and staff is able to meet these findings. The project, it's on a unique lot where the grade is below the street, and so it's actually perceived to be 1 story from the street level, with a lot of separation from the 2nd story and adjacent properties. So there is not massing impacts in staff's opinion on the adjacent properties. It's in character with the neighborhood. And so staff is able to recommend approval of this project. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thanks, Chris, for the presentation. And I just have one follow-up question. Is the proposed addition adding to the nonconformity?
It is not.
Okay, all right, thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Would the applicant wish to speak or provide a presentation?
This is Chris Forsell, and I think Chris Wright summed it all up.
Okay, thank you for that. And I know we have Vivian and Steve Ford participating as well. Would either of you like to speak?
No, actually, Chris Wright summed it up just like Chris Forsell just said. We look forward to working with the city on this new project.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. All right, with that, I will close the public hearing. And based on the information in the staff report, the plans that were submitted as part of the development proposal, which were very well done and illustrated well the proposed additions to the 1st and 2nd floor on the property. I can make the findings for the minor architectural permit. The architectural treatment of the project complies with the San Clemente General Plan. The project's size, scale, architecture, setbacks, and material are consistent with the applicable development standards and design guidelines. The proposed residential addition scale and massing is in character with and compatible with adjacent properties. The architectural treatment of the project complies with the zoning code in areas including height and setback. The project maintains the 2-story scale of the residence with a balance of square footage being added to the 1st and 2nd floors. The architectural treatment of the project complies with the architectural guidelines in the city's design guidelines, and that the project is in character with the scale and size of residences in the neighborhood. The general appearance of the proposed project is in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. The proposed project complies with the development standards of the zone. The residence maintains the 2-story character in an area with 1- and 2-story houses. The massing and scale of the residence steps down a slope to follow the topography of the street and properties in the area. The site itself slopes down from the street, so the residence's 1st story is mostly below street level, reducing the structure's apparent mass from the street. And the proposed residential addition is not detrimental to the orderly and harmonious development of the city. The project meets minimum development standards set forth by the zoning ordinance, and the use proposed is on a developed site and will be required to meet the California Building Code and Orange County Fire Authority requirements. So with that, I will determine that the project is categorically exempt from the requirements of the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to guidelines section 15301, class 1, existing structures. And I approve Resolution ZA 20-024, which is the minor architectural permit 20-205 Ford residence, subject to the resolution and conditions of approval. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the next item on the agenda, new business. Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, old business. There's no old business to address, so I will adjourn this meeting of the zoning administrator to the next regular meeting of the zoning administrator to be held on Thursday, December 17, 2020 at 3 p.m. via teleconference, as the December 3rd, 2020 meeting has been canceled due to a lack of business. Thank you. Bye.